Reflective Podcast.
My human vessel's name is Rocco, and I'm here with two incredible brothers, Hermes and Jamuna. Jamuna, we couldn't figure out how to get his video on, but we're going to put a beautiful picture of his face in here anytime.
It means you could understand that means you could put any picture of any face, put a dog.
Just put a dog. Well, dog, God, dog, either way.
Right, exactly.
Well, I feel like we're about to go in on a really beautiful tributary river pathway into an ocean of understanding, because amongst all these conversations I have with human beings, I text you two individually and I'll check in and I'll be like, hey, this thing, have you noticed this archetype in the collective? And the dialogues that my system is privileged to have with the both of you on these topics, everything really cycles and circles and encapsulates around this idea of the evolution of humanity into what we know as Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness. And although we could start anywhere, and even before the recording started, Jamuna, you started dropping in on, and there's so much to the algorithm of why the collective is, let's be honest, we've as a collective been going through an identity crisis for a long time. It just happens to now be bursting into the topic of socially demanding the recognition of my preferred identity. It's really been like that for a long time. And it's just now to the point where the feminine
can't stand it anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. And all that being said, there is this phenomenal situation happening that I'm sure it'll come back to gender and all kinds of other stuff, but it's the beautiful topic of Jesus. And I've had probably the most clear, loving, rooted in knowledge, and not of the mind, but of the heart, of the Christos, of the true Christ, and the true knowingness, the true jnana, the true nana, gnosis, knowledge of who Yeshua, Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, the Christos, this rabbi, ultimate reference point for awakening and embodiment and integral spirituality, not head idea, psychologically based spirituality concepts, but an integrated being who really led the way, and then Rome told the story and edited, etc. And I had this really interesting experience, and both of you, I'm going to hand the baton soon, but just to set this context up, I had this really powerful conversation with a pastor here in Florida that my mom introduced me to. And this brother is beautiful. I mean, so ready to love, and just the hug. You can feel a man's willingness to be loving in a hug, chest and abdomen touching, like, oh, this is a beautiful brother. I love this brother already. I don't even know this brother. I love this brother.
Nice.
And he used to be a Navy Marine. I'm not sure if it's Navy SEAL Marine, some type of, badass, like used to be military. And now it's like he uses that same passion and dedication for Jesus. And he's a pastor. And I've seen some of his sermons online. Like, seems like he speaks in these kind of different places and eateries and non-traditional church settings, but also I've seen him in a church as well. And I'd only met him once, and now I had some phone calls with him. And this extraordinarily interesting thing happens that has happened to me before. Hermes, we talked about dearest, beloved sister, Mirror, Freedom Franklin. Jamuna, you and I have talked about my mother, Shemaine, and my father, Theodore, and this karmic structure that this one called Rocco happens to be amongst. And my personal testimony with Jesus is amongst the most extraordinary that I've ever heard. My relationship with Jesus has constantly been my anchor point amongst my Raja Yoga training and shamanism, ayahuasca, DMT, trauma therapy, initiation,
right.
you name it. I've always come back to Yeshua. And amongst it all, I'm interfacing with Western, Caucasian, Scandinavian lineaged white people that look at, they look at me. It's coming. They look at me, Rocco, and they, with this incredible conviction, they say, all right, are you ready? And I'm like, oh, I love it. Cause I've never not been ready. Cause, oh yeah, of course I'm ready. And then it's like building up, and I'm thinking it's just building up to, Krishna. Oh, and then they say, it's time to let everything else go. And I'm like, yes, that's it. And then they say, if it's not Jesus, it's literally a demon. And I'm like, wait, wait a minute. You mean, like, do you know who Hanuman is? What do you know about Saraswati? What do you know about Krishna? Do you know Shiva? Have you ever met a real Raja Yogi? Do you know Yogananda? Do you know Yogananda has chapters and chapters worth of literally just called the Yogi of Jesus, the Yoga of Jesus? Adyashanti is this white dude who literally just wrote several books. You ever heard of Wayne Dyer? And I want to reference these situations that are more integral and have comprehensive analysis of these other systems that aren't particularly Christian, that then give context to Jesus, that context to Yeshua. And it's so different from this very rigid, I mean, there's really no room for acceptance in these lines of thinking. And it feels so funny to me as of now. It's like a funny bone. It's like you get hit on your elbow, your spiritual elbow. And it's this feeling of like, wait, you were on it. You had it. I was right there with you. What? Wait a minute. You're using Jesus to tell me that I'm fucked? No, that's not. This has all become so strange all of a sudden. I'll leave it at that and just say, whoever wants to go first, what? I'm sure there's other indigo crystal children out there of the second coming, individuals just like us who are indigo ray
The
conscious.
second.
The first, the second, all of it. And the interface with this archetype. What are we interfacing with, y'all? What is this?
Brother, you go first. I want to hear what you have to say.
Huh. It seems just like it's a lack of information, but then also the relationship that you have with Christ is your relationship with self and love. If Christ is unconditional love and love is infinite, then there's so many ways to experience Christ, right? And so I would just say that that's just through their particular lens of what their vocabulary or vernacular that they have with the divine.
Beautiful.
Simple.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's actually the way Jesus would put it, which is really sweet, because there's no judgment. It's completely without bias. It's said completely from the neutral perspective of heart center. So that's beautiful, and that's Christ consciousness, and that's a beautiful thing to hear, and it's reality. So,
Let's sticky note on that. Jamuna Das, what is Christ consciousness, and what's the difference that these Western kind of modern day claiming to be Christians, they just say Christian? What are the difference between folks like this on this call that claim to be, in some way loving? We call Christ conscious, they call Christian. What is that difference?
Right. Well, the way Jesus explains it is this. Jesus explains it now. The thing is that what's so interesting about Jesus is that, with all the people who are calling themselves Christians, and crying and Jesus and blah, 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 is that it's all self-convincing, because the thing is that's not Jesus at all. Jesus is straight up. Jesus is like, there's food, there's people, okay? There's a yoga mat, these are the exercises you do. It's not complicated. Jesus is as simple as you can be. In what he does is he reduces things. Now, the reason why all these constructs exist is because in duality, we had to be veiled from the simplicity of reality. And so on top of that, all this complexity was put, and, all this religions, 16,000 different, vicissitudes of Christianity, which are all just ways to keep us from connecting to Jesus. Just talk to the guy. Really, and the bottom line is, and to realize he ain't just some guy, I mean, the thing is he is the guy, because he is actually transformed energetically, so that his particles all vibrate vibrate complete prismatically the holograph that he is while he's imbued in physical, whatever manifestation he comes in. He comes in many times, but he's most known in this time sequence as Jesus. And so the only reason all this exists in kind of like, is this real? Why that pastor exists and all these things exist is because this is the last of duality. So we have to see that line, and you were shown the line of demarcation so that we can talk about this, because nobody knows. I mean, the thing is we were all thrown into this with the seed of complete pure math, and then we were thrown into a dualistic construct and say, well, Jesus is the way, Jesus is the light. Well, guess what? The reason why they're saying that is beyond the religion of those people who are saying it, is because, okay, follow the yogi with the clear math. Now, that's the truth. Follow the yogi with the clear math. There's Jesus, okay? And so what happens is through the lens of duality spawns religion. You know, I don't know if you've all read Frederick Douglass's book, you know, Once a Slave or whatever it was. He had escaped from the South idea, and then he went up north, and he actually was finishing up in Philly. And the last chapter, what's so fascinating about this is the last chapter he's writing. He says, I can't say certain things like where I am right now, you know, in the Northeast. So you got the real time experience. And here's somebody who was raised a slave idea in this lifetime by his agreement, you know, and that he taught himself not just English. It says he was able to write and express himself on the highest level of articulation. Dostoevsky, you know, I mean, that level, Helen Keller, it's the highest level of kind of communication. Viktor Frankl, given these letters. And what he said in this book was, he says, the Christians, those who call themselves the Christians, dear, were the most dangerous, were the most vicious of any of them, because they would go to church, and as soon as they came, you could expect after church, they would come back and they would get brutalized by these men, brutalized by the Christians. So they were the most dangerous, the ones who are calling themselves Christians, which is fascinating because they don't understand Jesus. They don't understand. They're reaching. So they're reaching for everything else in their life. It's not their fault. It's a program. And so, you know, in order to exercise their kind of control, what they think is over the physical reality, they create destruction, and that's what this is. That's what this is about, and that's why Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, it's all the same. Krishna, Christ, it's all the same. Jesus went to India for most of his life for a reason. Now, if you say this if you said that to this pastor, by the way, why do you think Jesus spent most of his life in India? He'd go, what? What are you talking about? And you know, the most, you know, seem like elevated fellows. By the way, there's no detail that is to be overlooked. And like you referred to him, this pastor, but he was a badass, you said, okay? So, from whose perspective? See, in all of our perspective, we were trained, what, that guy's a badass, so you can listen to him. Because in duality, we were taught we got to defend ourselves instead of going, wait a minute, God will defend us. All we have to do is stay in God. So that vernacular is so embedded in us. Okay, he was a badass. He was a special forces. He was this. Well, you know, I mean, he needed that in his bio, and he also needs it now because he's going to transform. He's going to listen to this and realize, okay, that's a crock of shit. Okay, really, all it is a cover. You know, that's just a cover. It's a cover of fear of intimacy. That's all. Fear of intimacy with his own gender for everybody. You know, we're not taught how to love each other, not how to love. So he went so far by feeling you, loving you, you can't help it because, you know, you're a magnet, Rocco. And you're a Christ consciousness magnet. So he was able to press himself against you, you know. And the next level is he pushes away and go, okay, now there's demons, you know, because what happens is when it gets to the chakra, when it gets to the what's called the sex organ, which is not, there's no such thing. It's the creation chakra. It's not the sex chakra. It's the creation chakra. It's where creation comes through. This is why when we create, we're aroused. We're aroused. And so what happens when it gets down to it goes to the belly, and when it starts to go down to the creation chakra, and he feels himself starting to be aroused, that's where Rocco, he comes in and goes, demon, there's a demon, because that's the program that he was given. Okay, whoa, stop right there. Don't let that be aroused. And that's what you can read the map. It's really easy to see. It's not his fault. It's a program.
Hermes, what do you get on that?
On how people perceive Christ, or
Yeah, and specifically Christ consciousness versus modern Western Christians' reference of Christians.
Christ consciousness is unconditional loving awareness. It's just awareness. It's awareness that I am love and that I come from love and that everything is love. Everything is either a distortion of love or love. And the only way to, since we're in a world, since we're in the world of duality, like we exist in pole hemispheres of consciousness. Union or yoga, right, is meeting with the one, with Neo. So yeah, Christ is if you want to get like technical about it, like crystalline consciousness, the crystal spiral, geometry and all that, it's like, I don't know, where should I start?
You know what it is.
I do. So if we look at the book of Genesis, for instance, let's just look at some of the structures in alchemy, right? So the Holy Bible, also known as the Helios Biblios, meaning sun book, is an alchemical sun book full of encryptions of alchemical internal biological processes. The book of Genesis and the first couple lines essentially show you how to create what is known as the flower of life formation, which is a holographic simulation code. And this holographic simulation code essentially allows us to experience spirit inside of matter. And all of the other stories inside of the Holy Bible or Helios Biblios are also full of encryption codes like John, Mark, Luke, Matthew, and their stories are directly connected to the base pair DNA in adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. And even like Moses's story or Ezekiel's story, I believe it was Moses who made contact with the thrones, right? Or was it the cherubim? He essentially, which is really funny, Moses in the burning bush, the bush was acacia, and acacia has a high amount of DMT inside of it. So if you actually smoke acacia, or if you partake in it alchemically, you go on a dimethyltryptamine trip.
Oh.
And Yeshua, if you look at the thoracic spine, there are 4 sections or segments to the spine, and every single numeric value of the spine actually is directly connected to Yeshua's life, like dying at 33, right? And
wow, that's fascinating. Holy shit, that's fascinating.
and this is also the return of Christ, and how, like, if you study galactic history, you find out that Yeshua was actually, well, let's say back in the day, he was a mason, right? So it means that he's a stone builder. He's a freelance creationalist, I guess. And so for a particular portion of his life, he actually...
excuse me, Hermes, among other professions.
Yes, of course.
Right. And it's documented more
Yes.
widely understood that he worked as a carpenter, but then the
Right.
higher accord of these, etc.
Right. Whatever the story needs, right.
And so Yeshua was a mason. That's what a carpenter is, right? A builder. And he was inducted into the mystery schools, and he was taught a bunch of these things. And during the crucifixion of Christ, that phenomenon actually happens as an Egyptian graduation ceremony. And Yeshua was most famous because he was able to perform resurrection properly. And so what happens during that type of ritual is that the initiate would go inside of the box inside of the king's chamber, which actually hosts the Ark of the Covenant, which is a free energy technology, but it's like a battery. And the initiate would sit inside of there. And during the spring equinox, when the stars align, the pyramid would actually ramp up with so much energy that you're able to shoot souls into Orion itself. And so Orion is also known as the pineal gland of the macrocosmic being that we're inside of. It's also known as the exit points of the body, right? And so Yeshua was sent through the Orion or Sirius gateway, and then he was able to get back into his body. And so this is known as the, like, Christ dying for 3 days and coming back to life. That physically happened, yes, but on a biological process, it's also 2 days out of the month, your sun sign is in, or 2 days out of the month, your sun sign
Is where it was when you were born.
correlated with the moon. So,
Oh.
so the moon essentially creates this holotrophic germ inside of your solar plexus. And if you do a particular type of breath work technique, you can actually send the Christos oil from the pineal gland around the brain casing, through the vagus nerve, down. Like, the vagus nerve is responsible for sending salt throughout the body. So this chemical is then sent down the body into the sacral or the sacred chakra. And if you do the holotropic breathing correctly, you can actually push this seminal fluid up your spine. And it would sit in the back of the skull, known as the cave of Brahma, for 3 days, where this transmutation takes place, and it becomes known as it becomes the blood of Christ. So this is the act of turning water into wine. And from that, that chemical, that wine, then re-enters, or also known as the blood of Christ, re-enters the pineal gland and creates a psychoactive effect. Similar to taking psychedelic mushrooms, which if you study, if you study Yeshua and the magic mushroom, it's really fascinating because a lot of these art pieces depict him as a mushroom itself. And this is where the Vatican and the Catholic Church gets a lot of the red and white symbolism.
It's Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, exactly, which is also known as Saint Claustrum, which is a gland inside of the brain.
Corpus Claustrum.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to this cerebrospinal fluid, the usage of cerebrospinal fluid in an incarnation with the karmic structure's opportunity to evolve.
And this this Christos oil is also known as the red elixir in Oriental teachings. It has many different names throughout the ages, but essentially it is like doing the alchemical work within, understanding that your body is the lab in which you do the great work.
Mm-hmm. Which is why when I found this dude, Will Dupree, talking about Kriya Yoga and Amrit, we're reading this Shiva Samhita, and he starts talking about Amrit. And you do these kriyas, which everything you just did, you said about the holotropic breathing, and then you're basically pressurizing different internal components of the body with breath. So you're basically consciously restricting breath. You're bringing yourself into fight or flight and restricting oxygenation consciously with super near proximity to over oxygenation, and then you under oxygenate, and then you become against gravity. You're pulling the thing that you're being pulled down by up and hold it in this space, which is near the pineal gland, Ajna chakra, above Vishuddhi. And it's talking about this place you can point the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, and this thing you do with the mula bandha. And I'm listening to this white dude with tattoos on his body talking. I'm like, holy shit, this is this stuff in this. And all is written in this old book called the Shiva Samhita, and it's called Amrit. And if you get this thing to pop, it's actually a granthi, or a knot around your pineal gland, that if you get it to secrete through pressurization and heat, and this is a heat only produced by alchemy and conscious intent, and that heat is called tapas, and it dilutes the calcification around the pineal gland
Mhm.
and basically allows this honey-like serum
Mhm.
or an immortal elixir. And
Mhm.
I'm listening to this, and these other, like, people around me listening. I'm like, I don't think anyone else is listening like I'm listening. And he's saying, yeah, it's called Amrit, and you can cause it to drip from your pineal gland, and it'll be like this sweet kind of taste in the back of your throat. And I'm like, from breathing, bro? And this is, I've also gone to Will Dupree to talk about this. It's like, yo, what happens when westernized people don't have any tactile communication with Yeshua's real blueprint, which is, yo, get off the couch and be your own damn alchemist. Rise your own damn Christ.
That's Jesus.
That's Jesus.
Mhm.
Stop looking at me. Do it.
Jesus is no nonsense, man.
I talked to Jesus in prayer one time, and I was like, Jesus, what should I do? Stop asking me. Go do it.
Exactly.
You know.
And you always know Jesus when you hear. It's like it's beautiful. Hermes, is beautiful to hear your voice, because your voice comes from that place. It's not just what you're speaking of. Your voice actually comes from that place. So it's really beautiful to hear. And also that, where we have to understand that we're dropped into this place by agreement. We were shown brochures. This is gonna be great. There's dogs. Oh my God, there's zebras. Wow. Monkeys. And they're going to show us in the choruses, and there's Luther Vandross. Oh. And the thing is that we had to be tricked. We had to be tricked. A lot of us, on the spirit, on a. That's the joke, and like the spirit world is like on every level, we're privy to what we're privy to, and we're veiled of what we're veiled. There's parameters to everything, and I mean, what's happening now just in this conversation is, and I don't want to dominate this conversation in any way, because what the two of you have to say is just like bathing my ears, my brain, everything. It's so sweet, and I can feel, well, and that's it. I don't need to say anything else, because that's the truth right now. That's all I'm feeling is both of your energy fields and your articulations. And Rocco, what's beautiful is that your articulation of the, shall we say, the hyper-articulated necessity, articulation that must be articulated, and also your ability that's God-given, of course, is to put together energies, just by having a triangle today of the three of us is really a very powerful point, that that this is Christ-guided. I mean, it's clear. We all have our experience with Christ's energy very clearly and very viscerally. And, you can't hold it against anyone. This pastor, the thing is his initial response is Christ consciousness. It's like the rabbis would stop me. There's a rabbi would stop me I'd be on my rollerblades or whatever in the alleys up in Santa Monica. I remember one day, and I always go in the garbage across the street, because they throw away the homeless shelter. They'd throw away thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of high-end clothing. They'd get the donations, and literally just from the cleaners, and they'd throw cashmere, everything into the garbage. And so I'd pull it all out, And so he always sees me, and he goes, Jamuna. He goes, he sees me. He's so happy. He gets out of his car, and this rabbi, and he gives me a hug. I'm so happy. And then he goes, tefillin? You're going to do tefillin? You're going to put tefillin? I said, there it is, right there. He says, what? But that's where you stepped out of love. I said, because that's where you went to your script, because you saw me. You were so excited. You gave me a hug. And then you went to your script. He went, oh. For the first time in his life, he was ever able to see it. It was profound. And so, like, with that moment, with that pastor, that's the moment we say, okay, that's it right there. You see that moment? That's where the demons, that's where you shifted, and you went to your mind to a program. Okay, so stay soft in it. Okay, you're already a badass if that's what you need to be. People need reassurance. Okay, you're a badass. You prove it. So you're not a fag. Okay, there you go. I'm not a fag, and I love Jesus. It's like whatever. because all of those things, all those monikers are the ego placed on us to actually keep us away from Christ consciousness. That's the game. It's nobody's fault. That's the game we signed up for. Get back. How do you do it? You got to be in the moment. You have everyone you see you love. And by the way, if I can do something, hang on, while I'm on the phone with both of you, I'm in our kitchen, which Rocco, you've spent time in, but Hermes, I'll share this with you. In 2008, I was raised with Jesus was a fart joke, literally, in our house. I mean, Jews from back east, and forget it. East Coast Jews, Jesus, you can't even, there's not a reality anywhere in this, okay? So I had to come from a place of complete proving for me. Everything had to be proved. So I'm standing right now, I got chills on saying, I'm standing in the kitchen, and Rocco, you know it's where the back door is in that little hallway, and I'm standing right here in 2008, where I walked upstairs, stood here, and Jesus, and I can understand, I can eat handfuls of LSD, handfuls of mushrooms, as Rocco will attest to. I don't hallucinate, okay? And right in front of me is Jesus. I'm right here standing, by the way. Right here, the phone is actually where Jesus is standing. Right here, I feel him smiling. And in front of me is Jesus, a foot and a half away, and he is floating from the waist down. I'd say he's just faded. And I have never in my life seen anything like this. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I've never seen anything. I've never seen a being so clear, so present. Every particle. There was nothing else going on. He contained everything. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I go, Jesus. And he goes, Jimmy. And I go, whoa. And he goes, and this is what he says to me. He looks me in the eye. Of course, never veers, doesn't blink, nothing. And it was almost like like you're talking about that fluid from the pineal. His is everywhere. Every pore had this DMT energy. Every single pore. It was like glistening and so palpable. And he said to me, when I open my eyes and all I see is love, then my eyes are really open. And then he watched me. I'm standing. It is emotional because I'm standing exactly in the spot. And then I'm sharing this with you and knowing where it's going in the world. And Rocco, you know how many languages is being translated into simultaneously because of biometrics and whose ears it needs to hear. Okay. And he watched me say it in my head because what he said was so beyond anything that I could even comprehend in the simplicity of the genius. And he said to me, when I opened my eyes, and he heard me repeating it in my head, and he's watching me repeat it in my head, when I open my eyes and all I see is love, then my eyes are really open. And he saw me see the entire collapse of what is known as religion, which is necessary up to this time. Otherwise, we wouldn't have kept him in the foreground. Doesn't matter if he's dead on a cross, doesn't matter anything. Just keep him in its duality. Just keep him in the game, okay? For this time now, where we don't need it anymore. And he saw me see all of this. And then I watched him. I mean, there's nothing else to watch. And he's watching me. And I'm seeing the path that he's put ahead of me, in the world. And man, and then he collapsed into it like a very like as thin as metal, the thinnest metal you've ever seen, and at a lightning speed, like a hummingbird, and into my right arm, whoo, like this, and into my body, literally. And now there's something that I will share this because this is going out wide, and this is a story that Rocco, that and also this is a full circle. A month earlier, John Stamos, who was pure Christ consciousness, and the reason why I'm bringing up his name is because there's a reason why he's in everybody's hearts for how many, generations, because he's pure Christ consciousness, is John Stamos came over to the house alone because he had just, split with Rebecca at the time, and who we were mad about, and so he came to the house the day after Christmas. He brought a whole bunch of instruments, which the girls and I, we were just jamming in the kitchen. He's one of the great drummers of the world. And they were all magical. So they were teaching us how to play simultaneously because he's Christ consciousness. And then he said he takes out he had these little teeny things. He was in Brazil and got these they're like little, with Jesus in the front with not in the cross, with the light coming out of his chest, and Mary on the side. They're just teeny little wooden things lacquered, and with a little Buddhist red string around it. He ties it around Iris's neck first, and then he ties it around my neck. And there's in the back. And as he's talking to both of us as he's doing it, because he's a high-level Christ consciousness operator, John Stamos. And he says, and I'm thinking, and I say to him, boy, this takes a lot of balls. I said, you know, a lot of chutzpah. I said, this takes a lot of chutzpah. I said, you know, putting this on two Jews' necks the day after Christmas. And he says, I remember exactly how he said it because he's mathematical like Jesus. He says, your life from this point on everything's going to shift. Basically, everything's going to change. Everything's going to shift. So everything is going to shift. And he read my mind, you know, and he said, by the way, you can give this when it's time to give it away. You can give it to somebody. And so he dealt with my attachment issue and non-attachment, and then okay, fine, that's great. And this happened a month later, you know. And so, you know, all of these characters that are coming to play now are all Christ consciousness based. Vladimir Putin is Christ consciousness. You know, Ted, you know, your dad and Shemaine, they're Christ consciousness. Now, everybody has to have a certain veil until they're talking to Jesus. And then it's not like, no, it's not a big deal. Oh my God, you're talking to Jesus. Well, hello. Everyone can talk to Jesus. First, you have to be able to talk to yourself. You have to be able to hear your own voice and distinguish it from all the other voices that you've been programmed with to tell you who you aren't. And so you're stripped down to the simplicity of the stillness of your own being. And in that stillness of your own being is when you encounter Jesus and the entire multiverse.
Wow. Yes.
Snaps. Lots of snaps. I love hearing Jamuna go into full articulation on his testimony because I guess technically you are a baby boomer-ish, Jamuna. And
I love how you say technically. It's so hysterical. I know, because it's just a funny thing. You know, I was thinking about that today just before. I mean, that I have to subscribe to something. You know, I mean, even though I'm a time traveler, obviously
it helps.
No,
it helps.
I mean, it helps because you have to be in contact. We're all time travelers.
It gives others context as to like, well, how is your perspective even beginning to be relevant? And it's like, I think that's one of the first places I, you know, if I were to connect you to this other pastor here in Florida, like if you can see that someone survived more than a few decades in a human vessel, it's like, all right, well, they figured something out. And then if you can see the brightness in their eyes, you know, vice versa. There's several things that during your soliloquy, it peaked up. I'm going to hit them as just bullet points because I was taking notes, and maybe we can go back into ping pong about it. The biological processes. Have either of y'all ever heard of Neville Goddard talk about how the Bible is this crazy metaphor? Have you ever heard of Neville Goddard?
No.
I haven't until now. Now I can say, yes, I've heard of Neville Goddard.
So beautiful. Such a beautiful soul, I guess, was prominent in speaking in America from like, I don't know, I might have I should have Googled this, but like the 20s to the 40s, I want to say. And if you ever heard of Manly Palmer Hall, you know, speaking on the occult, speaking on manifestation, speaking on the law of attraction in the 1930s. And I heard these incredible, powerful bridge moments in Neville Goddard's tone in his consciousness, where he says, the Bible is the story of you remembering who you were and always have been. And every character in the Bible is a state of your consciousness. He says, stop looking at Paul or John or Luke as characters that are different than you. See them as characters that you forget yourself as.
Exactly.
And has this, it just has incredible, you know, simplification kind of codes. It's a state, every character in the Bible is a state of consciousness. Check out Neville Goddard. Also a phrase that I want to kind of put another kind of elaboration sticky note on this as a concept, because separateness is really you could say it's the virus that Yeshua, I think, really zoomed in on as a karmic signal. Just have faith is something that you hear a lot of people in religious contexts say, like, you need faith. And I think that's this, I feel that there is an incredible relevance for religion for so many souls that don't understand where they should belong. They don't know where to sort out their I am presence. They don't know where to hook onto, because as soon as you hook onto anything, you got to be responsible for anybody that those folks are responsible. It's like,
yes, and
by association.
Rocco, if I may interject, what you're
Please.
saying is very important, but it's also important to note that because those pastors and priests are at the same level of expansion that they are, okay, that's why they're drawn to them. They're not talking to Jesus.
Yeah, it's a
either
perfect mirror.
the pastor, they want to, the same thing.
Yeah, it's a perfect signal.
Yeah.
So I know, Hermes, we've gone into it, and Jamuna, I think I mentioned it to you, and I love that. And it's Hermes and I have nerded out over all the stuff we've read and dissected, and then I think Jamuna and I have nerded out over all the stuff that we've never read and never dissected. So it's a beautiful triangulation of coordination. But
well put.
In the teachings of Ra, but it's also in Vedic, yogic anatomy. It's not like, oh, this is an idea. Here's an idea, everybody. It's like, no. What is a table? And then what's the difference between the table and then like angelic beings or Jesus? Like, please help me describe the understanding of what the difference is. First density, minerals, earth, fire, water, air. Sorry, not minerals, elements. I would say elements, elementals, basically. First density is elements we all know the fire, earth, water, air, and then ether. The second density, and we're not talking about densities as a concept. It's like there's existence, and existence is organizing itself in matter, and consciousness isn't in matter, but consciousness augments matter
and creates it,
manifests it, conducts it, conductivity, electromagnetics. So first density, it's consciousness with very little free will. The elements, you could really dissect it and be like, yeah, there's free will, but it's just less than second density. Second density is plant and mineral life. So a rock and a bush and a tree, especially when you see a tree literally over years growing towards the east or towards a direction where it's just like in the forest, it gets a little more sunlight and wind, and it literally is growing towards life. And then obviously dogs, like there's the opportunity to, you spray it with the hose and it runs away. You give it a treat, it comes towards you. It can't tell you what it wants with it, English language, but it can yelp, and it has definitely a sense of free will. Third density is where human beings have been stuck for so long. So first density, elements. Second density, plant and animal life. Third density is worthy of zooming in and just a whole book on just the third density, which there's a beautiful book by a Western dude who turned yogi, and he called it The Fourth Turn, which I remember grabbing the book and be like, whoa, that's it. That's what's happening. And it's this talk about how the solar plexus has technically been, it's like where we've been stuck as an evolutionary holding pattern. And third density is this spectrum where you can look at it, how I see it is lower third density is like herd mentality. So it's people who, yeah, you're a person, but I mean, amongst McDonald's and, whatever other programs you're mindlessly subscribing to, it's almost like you are actually without free will because you're participating on this lower bandwidth of third density where the Manipura yellow ray bandwidth of the electromagnetic spectrum, you're at the lower gradient of that. So it's towards orange, and that is towards fight or flight, and it's less towards individualism. The upper bandwidth of third density gets towards hyper individualism, which is where I also feel like this Luciferic light became so attractive to not just Europeans, but a lot of human beings in the past, eons, because they wanted to use their individuality to the most refined place possible, but they didn't have the next evolution, which is Fourth density, lovingness. Fourth density, unity. Heart chakra, green ray consciousness. And then fifth, sixth and seventh are fifth density is like wisdom. I always look at it as Yeshua's fourth density blueprint. Buddha and bodhisattvas are fifth density blueprints. So it's like wisdom sometimes can feel unloving. And then, fourth density love can sometimes almost be without wisdom, because you can almost bypass wisdom because you love something so much. It's almost like it can become self-sacrificing, etc. Whereas wisdom is like, I'm gonna actually be evolved past the opportunity to quote unquote dirty the karma or make a less efficient movement here in this relational navigation, and I'm going to go to a higher place of navigation, etc. I say all that because I see all this happening as specifically this topic of navigating who is Jesus, and Westerners telling these indigos and these crystal kids, and I see a hermit. I see a hermit like Hermes. I see a human like Hermes, and I see the mirror of the hermit that I became. And also, Brother Jamuna, you introduced me to Brother Shai. I saw these young people with this facial geometry that I'm like, whoa, you're literally me in a different freaking body. What's it like? And it's this incredible opportunity to connect and grow together. And the friendship, the alchemical bond, the solar partnership, the understanding that can come when you really click into another Christos's perspective. And it's like y'all begin that, that mitochondrial, usurpation of your separateness. And you're like, whoa, you share that information. That is that Vesica Pisces moment. And where the two circles all of a sudden start to edge out each other's separateness and then bind into one inner kind of yoni-shaped, eye-shaped, vesica shaped sharingness. And
wow,
I see that as this, it's like this nature as the rain starts really kicking in here in Florida, and the palm trees are just blowing sideways and the thunder starts crickling in.
Hey Rocco, I'd like to share something with an image that I had, a very powerful image
Please.
with you. I just saw this powerful image of you and Ted hugging, and Ted breathing you in, smelling your hair, hugging you and smelling you, and crying and breathing you in, because he's a man of instinct, of nature, and because of social construct has not been allowed to breathe in his own son. And that's his healing. That's what I see. It's like I see the world healing, and that's what I see as the two of them, because he loves you and you love him so, and you have such a profound agreement and understanding of what each other's here to do. And the last step is smell each other, breathe each other in, hug and breathe him in. And my God, the feeling of being a father as I am, and I have to tell you, it's really challenging in this dualistic nature. Being a parent and being a father has become a nightmare, because having two daughters grown, it's like, it's just recently that I've been able to actually, one of my daughters here is actually say, I want to hug you, I want to hug Dad. It's like she's been so programmed to dismiss her father, dismiss the male, dismiss everything, I realized she had to be programmed that way. It had to be part of the program, till she had to come back to her full loving self to go, my God. And she's hugging you, and it's like, and she's hugging me, and I'm like smelling her. I'm going, Ma, this is my baby. Oh my God.
It's like it made the distance greater for the return to be more profound.
Exactly. And breathing each other in. And I mean, and thank you for that, because all I see is, and it's fun. I use yours and Ted's relationship. I see it as, and when I say I really don't know anything. That's the truth. I mean, I'm just shown stuff, and, it's like whatever I'm supposed to see, I'm supposed to see. So it's neat how I'm often shown, and I'm going to just preface anything I say by that. It's like my guides are real clear. They're no nonsense, and it's like they're real clear and show me that you're in Ted's relationship and the significance on such a large level of the healing of the father-son on this planet, which is the issue, is healing the father, the son, and the mother and the daughter. And all it is a matter of intimacy. It's a matter of breathing one each other, looking in each other's eyes, smelling each other's hair on the top of their, smelling it. It's like, Rock, when I see you, first thing I do is, I was smelling your neck and your hair. And it's like a dog, and that's, to me, that's where it's at. It's like, now there you are. Now I know you, and that's what's been lost. It's that fear. And, we can talk all we want, but the bottom line is, are we smelling each other? We breathing each other in. Let's breathe, but let's breathe each other in. Let's breathe each other in. Really breathe each other. So we're not in isolation. Oh, and this is very important, Rocco. I want to add also, it's like the step, and it's everything. We all work together in this. This is all God working together. It's like the step of like the breath. Okay, now the step is in breathing, is when we breathe together. It's like the key is, okay, now we inhale together. Okay, it's very important, because what happens is there's a social embarrassment of breathing together. Okay, everyone, we can just inhale and then exhale, inhale, but there's still that just subtle, but not subtle to the universe. Just still not allowing for the full intimacy of that moment of, okay, let's do this together. Let's sync together very tightly. Let's hold this breath and all this chi, all this Christ consciousness energy, which is what it is. It's pure love. Let's hold this together now before we exhale through our mouth, and let's do it exactly together. So we're exactly on the same page with our breath.
That's it. That's this ritual that I feel, sorry to jump in, but that's this ritual that I feel our Christos, crystallinity. And even that language has really risen to the top of the densities amongst opportunity to speak about it, because it's like, oh yeah, Jesus, like, how does that, okay, who are you really talking about? Christ. Yeah. Oh yeah, who you really, crystallinity. Ooh, whoa, crystallinity. Yeah, the crystallinity. So I hear this crystallinity consciousness using breath as ritual, which is like, okay, yoga's been happening several thousand years before Yeshua was a rabbi, flipping tables and stuff, and showing this blueprint, and definitely way before Rome got their hands on the story. And I see it returning for sure. And I actually like to segue back into the bullet points, because that's one of the next bullet points I have. But I hear you, specifying that's like an incredible unification, union opportunity is the breathing. And I mean, I don't know how many are listening who have become conscious in the past 5 years, but how great is it to hug somebody and just take breaths with them and feel your belly touch? It's like, whoa, I don't remember that being anywhere near my family culture as a growing up. And so there's something happening with this transition from social ritual that you have to get to through the body in the place called society. And there's this shift into a internal ritual that maybe we share space together socially, but it's actually to then drop out of the social experience and go inward. And whether that's digital and, sadhana being that as wherever you are. I saw a yogi the other day and it just was like, yo, I recognize that you're a yogi. And she was wearing rudrakshas and had a Egyptian hieroglyph tattoo. And I'm like, I feel you do yoga. She's like, I do. I was like, what kind? She was like, integral kriya. I was like, fantastic. She was like, what about you? I was like, integral kriya, Raja and Kriya yoga. She's like, no way. I was like, see, this feels way better than being told you need Jesus. And it's like,
and now, Rocco, I have to say, the interjection is, all I'm seeing while you're saying this, I'm seeing Ted in a tree with a bow and arrow every day, okay, in a complete same state of Christ consciousness. That's all I'm seeing.
Man, you should see footage of him on tour every day for the past, every other day, sometimes 2 days in a row. And then he'll take a day off every like 3 or 4 days, I guess, for the past, I guess 3 weeks since July 14th, he's been on tour, and he's 73. And it's just like, what organism is this? Just to see
Christ consciousness. That's what it is. Christ consciousness. You know what I mean?
It is the Christos. Yes. So, okay. Back into this bullet point. So as a kid, one of the most ubiquitous terms, amen. Amen. And I'm reading these like the Egyptian Book of the Dead or whatever, somewhere along the lines. And I think I was 21 and I started finding the Kabbalion, found Hermes, found Thoth, and then found this Egyptian pathway that as a, I grew up in Michigan and Texas. I'd never touched anything from Egypt. And I'm looking at this book and it says Amun, Amun, Amen. And I'm like, wait, where'd you guys get that word? And, coming from hip hop, that's always the first like, whoa, that's dope. Where's that from? It's like the instinct. And it's like, whoa, this Western Judeo Abrahamic term, amen, that every prayer is ended with. Where'd that come from? Why, where, and why? And yeah, Amun Ra, Amen. Incredible. And there's the other, is it the Zeitgeist movie, Hermes, where it like breaks down how it's really the Helios, it's the same freaking, it's Horus and Osiris, Jesus and God, Thor, Odin. It's this bizarrely replicable format that is used all over so many different cultures. And it's always, from what I can tell amongst the studies, it is a journey of the soul's consciousness rising out of Saturn's grips, Saturn's time-based, space-based density of matter. And if you don't know no better, then I was talking about it with Bell earlier. It's like, if you don't know no better, then Jesus is probably way better than, if you're really unconscious and you're slowly kind of poisoning yourself with who knows what, or you're destructive internally and you don't know why, then just straight up Western Jesus is probably a great cup of tea for most human beings on their, wherever their progress is. But once you get those,
just so he's on your mind, that's all. Just so he's on your mind.
Yeah, and as a blueprint to lead the way so that you can do that. Not that you reference this dude outside of you to continuous, although I think that's where the conversations really started on this call, is like, that for me feels so incorrect, wrong. It's like, just let Jesus take the wheel. There's a part of it that's like, I get it. Let Jesus take the wheel, have faith, and let your upper soul self, shout out to Paul Selig, let the upper octave guide you. Okay, great. But you got to get off the couch. You get out of meditation at some point and you do Dharma.
Be functional.
You got to be functional. And there's this like, you can hear the separateness in that old algorithm of just like, it's just Jesus. It's like, Jesus is in your heart and it's on fire and it needs to be in action with alignment. Otherwise you create more karma. None of what I said has anything to do with demons. What? This other bar here, Hermes would love you to take the baton. Religion as training wheels for lower third density consciousness. It, consciousness individuates after being, the molecular just pool of everything. It doesn't have free will. The frequency is oscillating up and up. Now I'm an individual only to return back to its whole. And that's, I feel like, really where religion serves, is in assisting people's kind of autonomous function psychologically. But most people don't have that because they're functioning as a primarily social being. So where do people like you and I come in, and Jamuna come in, as souls that have, it's not like we just tasted the Kool-Aid. We got drunk off of that Ananda, off of that consciousness, off of that understanding, and religion and these old ways feel so incongruent to our very nature and to what we know as the actual truth. There's the baton. What comes up for you there?
Well, I want to touch on the Amen bit real quick.
Please.
Amen, Amon, also Amun in Egypt. Amun and Khanum are the inhale and exhale Neturu, or creator deities, or nature principles. And
Netters.
Yeah, natures essentially. And if you break down, because everything in this holographic matrix is coded. So if you break down the root, like etymology of these words and terms, you find them phonetically in like other words. For instance, amen is found in amenti, and amenti is from the emerald tablets, right? And it's actually a tonal frequency sequence that you utilize to be able to tap into harmonic like convergence of different densities. So in the body, a lot of the lower chakras are what is it? Ham, ram, yam, lam, bam, right? Which are sounds. And then men, when you say men, it hits the pineal area. And then, but the amen is missing the T, which is essentially what allows you to shoot out of the pineal gland and meet the Father. Like through the crown.
The cross.
Yes, exactly. Which is why they also say like the only way to the Father is through Yeshua. And that's true because Yeshua is the actual, like physiologically is the pineal gland. You can look in a lot of Da Vinci's old work and a lot of old Renaissance artwork of the cross and Yeshua's body. And it's the exact same physiology as like the brain stem.
Yeah.
And the pineal gland.
But wait, hold on there for a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Yeshua. Yeshua is the highest embodiment that this plane of existence, or from what I understand, any plane of existence has ever seen. But he is the manifestation of it. But what it really is the Christos, the actual, the thing that is the basis of the soul, which the yogis call the Atma, the Atman. And the main difference is that yogis understand that it's an eternal, endless being that has opportunities to come to earth and learn lessons, and that's karma and samsara. And the Western kind of Abrahamic lens is like, okay, you're a soul and you die and you got to be good, or you go to hell forever, or you go to heaven forever. It's a graduation and then done. So a very different kind of like elliptical kind of theory versus a very linear theory or lensing. But Yeshua is the highest embodiment manifestation that's ever existed. And there's this framework that you've shown me, Hermes, of like where Earth happens to be amongst the whole galactic, like literally all the multiverses. And we're literally at the hyper most ultra refined heart chakra point of the entire galactic existence. And that to me is the greatest reference of who Jesus Christ is. Yeshua is that. Now, was he an actual literal living human being? I really feel that, yes. Is he God? Not in that way. Is he the manifestation of God? Yeah, definitely. Is he a different manifestation than Krishna or Hanuman or Kuan Yin? Yeah. Is he a better manifestation? I don't feel that's a right, correct way of looking at it. It's not better. It's like, is Mount Kilimanjaro better than the Eiffel Tower? It's like, kind of not relevant. Like, who's better, Shaquille O'Neal or Allen Iverson? It's like, don't do that. Like, don't do that. That's the left brain social like measurement, quantity or quality. It's quantity. You're trying to quantize these measurement references into some hierarchical placement. It's like, it's not it. Don't do that. No, it's not. It's like I feel
Or wait a minute, let me interject, Rocco.
Hit it.
Okay, because instead of saying don't do that, because there's an aspect of us that once they don't do that, they are doing that. Okay, so
right,
to
exactly.
see fully, this is what they're doing, right? So there's that aspect we're programming in, where the don't is so deeply programmed into us, it is crazy.
Well, it's really what we're being told too with the Jesus thing. They're saying, "Would you say yoga? Don't do that." And that's really it's the reverberation of that same thing. It is non-integralness or non-unification, seeing its opposition in its reflection and saying no instead of acceptance and integration. Instead of integrating it, it's resisting it. So thank you for that mirror. And
it's essential. It's essential. We have to have that in duality. It has to exist.
Yeah, the molecular merger has to happen first. Social, mental, emotional. The merger has to be a full, congruity merger. It can't just be Like I get that a little bit. It's not fully. That's
Right.
still
Well,
ridden with
well,
resistance.
Rocco, in order for it to be fully integrated, it has to be first to be fully seen of what we were programmed with. So it's like we see that we're programmed with, I don't know, I don't have this, we don't have, we have to see it. Once we see the program, oh, wow, we're programmed. So we see the program. And once we see the program, that's the first awareness, of course, is the only way we can change anything. And then once we're aware of it and going, oh, okay, I'm not going to fight this, okay, and then I'm going to see exactly what it is. And so we can feel the entire consciousness construct of disallowance that's in that one word, don't, that I'm using. I see, wow, that's a deep program of a whole mass consciousness. Now in allowing that and seeing that, I go, and then of course we're given the information, of how, because we're coming from love then, instead of, resistance, instead of ego resistance, is that we're seeing, oh, okay, this is what I was programmed with. I see. So how do I what's the challenge now to get to love? And I'll use Jesus, all the time in sense of, okay, how can I better say that? Okay, what would Jesus say? Okay, it would say that. Okay, even in my mind, if I think something, I go, well, okay, what would Jesus think? Okay, he was not thinking that, And so he's this good benchmark in terms of shifting our vernacular from the programmed response to the authentic.
I feel that my system translates what was just spoken into the old way based in separateness, references Jesus as an outwardly materialized being, outside of self. And even in that, it's an incredible blueprint to reference and give full acknowledgement of like worship and adoration. And I don't mess with nothing else. I just this guy. Even in that way, it's an incredible blueprint. The new way, or not just the new way, it's a more integral way. The more expanded way, the more loving way, the more unified way. It is less separate. It is more union, in union. Is to see that Yeshua, Yahushua, Jesus Christos is literally the mirror of your highest calling inside of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Well put. Yeah, that way there's a blueprint out, because nobody knows, everyone's caught in it. No one, this pastor, everyone that listen, they were given the doctrine of what they do to keep Jesus in their mind. Well, if people need hell and damnation to have Jesus in their mind, then that's what they're going to get for 2,000 years, which happens in a blink of an eye. And then, so that's a really important articulation, Rocco, very important.
Okay, off of that, if we're sitting here, I'd love to sit here with Sadhguru. What's the difference between?
It's funny, I was thinking about him this morning too.
What's the difference between Christ and Krishna?
Different avatars.
Different avatars, same essence.
Quintessence.
Same quintessence. What's the difference between essence and quintessence?
A whole lot more essence.
A lot more essence. More bang. That's more bang for your buck where I'm from.
Exactly.
So, Muna, you can't see, but I just have it as a bookmark I carry with me. It's this one of those floral kind of cheap, like almost like a postcard, Jamuna, of like Krishna, and then Sita and Ram are at his side, and then Hanuman is actually at the feet with a lotus petal, and it's one of those like Sanskrit kind of yogic floral colored ornament, a lot of gold, and Sita Ram and Krishna are wearing crowns, and Hanuman's got his crown too. So like when I see this, I see Krishna as the divine manifestation of the soul self, the Jiva Atma's highest refinement, which the fact that he's got the blue tint I've always found interesting, because Vishuddhi it's expression. Like the throat chakra is expression. It's the octave of consciousness. The dogs and the cats and the turtles, meow, rah, 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 rah. There's no language. Consciousness gets real interesting when you start speaking friggin' language. And the highest refinement of that, Christ and Krishna. And then Sita and
Yeah.
Ram I see as the purest reflection of the masculine and the feminine, which without their higher soul self guidance, they're kind of in this drama perpetually of,
Oh,
oh,
that's interesting.
I'm the masculine and the feminine. And funny enough, the whole, and I'm not, I'm not a Vedic, theologian or whatever, but I know at least that Hanuman's whole story is that he helps reconnect Sita and Ram. And I
That's
see
so
that as,
interesting. God,
I see
that's so
that.
interesting. Wow,
So
wow.
last point. So I see that as this
Yeah.
incredible metaphor for the monkey self gets its highest anointedness when it serves the romance of the masculine and the feminine within first.
That's it. That's it. You got it right on the head there. That's
And the romance
exactly it.
and the romance of the masculine and feminine have to serve the higher self.
Exactly. Thank you. That's it. That's the key. That's the key to all of it. That's the key to every single aspect of it. I didn't understand that I didn't understand that before. About Hanuman, this house, we got everything. We got ancient, museum quality pieces of all this stuff everywhere. I didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it was. We collected it because that's what was real. And,
Right.
it's so funny whenever I hear about Hanuman and Sita Ram and anytime anyone sings Sita Ram, I always find myself turning it off. Like I have to hold my head, which is so interesting now because now I fully understand why. It's like Krishna Das, Sita Ram, Ram, Sita Ram, and and everyone's repeating Ram, Ram, Sita Ram. It's like a friggin' dredge. I'm thinking, no wonder people think these people are nuts. This is because, in a way, they are nuts because they are still locked in that cycle of the argument, which I didn't understand until you just illuminated this. Is that they're locked in that Sita Ram argument without the interjection of Hanuman to say, here, the male female is to free and connect to the pyramid. Oh wow, that's perfect.
Have you ever heard that whole song? Wait, didn't you text me the Hanuman Chalisa lyrics one time?
Oh, I listen to it around the clock over and over and over again. Yeah.
So wait, let's just I genuinely have no recollection of the translated Hanuman Chalisa lyrics in English, but I'm gonna Google it.
Nothing. I don't know anything, Rocco. You know that. I know nothing, but I do.
Okay.
I don't know what it means. I don't know anything.
I'm seeing some stuff. This is good. Here's the Hanuman Chalisa. So wait, for Westerners out there, I don't know. Maybe there's some Easterners who don't know the Chalisa. Whatever. The Hanuman Chalisa is a kirtan, creme de la creme. Like it's this. What is it? What's a kirtan? A kirtan is like a yogic gathering of song and mantra, and somebody's usually leading when there's some instruments, and it's like a call and response, just epic gathering of melody. And
but it's not kirtan. The Hanuman Chalisa is not kirtan. It's actually done. It's an individual invocation.
So it's not done in a kirtan ever? I feel like I've heard it.
No, it's not. I mean, it's almost impossible because it's actually 11 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, it's 11 minutes and nothing repeats. It's all it repeats, but it's definitely not call and response. Yeah.
Would you adding description to that I was given of kirtan, or that's pretty much what a kirtan is?
Yeah, that's kirtan. Kirtan is basically call and response.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a yoga gathering. Nobody's doing yoga stretching. We're just singing call and response. Anyways, here's this piece called the Hanuman Chalisa, and Hanuman is this very particular figure. It's just so bizarre. It's like anything other than Jesus is a demon. It's like, bro, what have you ever looked at? Anyways, I digress. So Hanuman Chalisa in English.
No, that's important. Actually, what you just said is important because I have to tell you that's very important because Christ consciousness is that which comes from the heart. Okay, which is why you can play James Taylor. You've got a friend on 24-hour loops because it's all Christ consciousness. There's certain songs that are Christ consciousness. That's it. So the Hanuman the Hanuman Chalisa. And probably the most astonishing version I've heard is the one I send you, is the one by Shantala, the group Shantala, Heather and Benji. It's mind-blowing. And I send that around all throughout the world, around the clock, as I'm guided. And I'll tell you what, people's response is, they can't even, it's a thank you everywhere. It's changing their lives. And the thing is I have no idea what they're saying, but you know what's the truth and you know what's not the truth. And it doesn't matter what they're saying. It's what chakras are coming out of. And when the Hanuman Chalisa is sung, you can't help it comes right out of your heart. So the entire 11 minutes comes right out of your heart chakra, regardless of what's being said.
All right. Well, you're probably going to like this English transcript. I've genuinely heard of this thing since I went to Bali in 2017. And I think I heard, sorry, not Ram Dass, Krishna Das talk about
Right.
and I've heard I think his version in audio. And I was like, well, this is beautiful.
It's wonderful as well.
My brother, Brett Fleischer, was playing it on his phone. And I was like, what is that? He's like, it's Hanuman Chalisa. I was like, what? I love Hanuman. He has a song. So here's the description, or not description, translation. I'm reading it off of Hindu Temple at NewYork.org. It seems to be literally word for word, kind of just translation. I hope this is it, but it looks pretty good. First line, Shri Guru Charan Saraj Ra Nijman Marika Saru. So this is how it all goes in Sanskrit. Here's the English translation. After cleansing the mirror of my mind with the pollen dust of the holy Guru's lotus feet, I profess the pure, untainted glory of Sri Raghuvar, which bestows the fourfold fruits of life, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, which one of Rocco's Shifu gurus has called as the Purusha Arthas, an incredible tool in yoga to help calibrate your souls. What are you here for? Next line. Fully aware of the deficiency of my intelligence, I concentrate my attention on Pavan Kumar and humbly ask for strength, intelligence, and true knowledge to reveal me all blemishes causing pain. Victory, O thee, O Hanuman, ocean of wisdom all. Hail to you, O Kapasi, fountainhead of power, wisdom, and Shiva Shakti. You illuminate all three worlds, entire cosmos, with your glory. You are the divine messenger of Sri Ram, the repository of immeasurable strength, through known only as son of Pavan, wind, born of Ajani. So son of Pavan. I've also found, quick pause. I've also found in a bunch of this Sanskrit yogic wisdom that's not in any way exoteric, meaning easily a freaking yoga pamphlet at your, nearby workout yoga place or whatever. It's like stuff that you got to do on the deep dive if you're really interested in self-realization, and the realization that none of these gurus or nothing means anything other than it's a mirror to you realizing who you really are. It's all servants.
Exactly.
Everybody's these crazy looking servants to help you remember that you're what you really are. So this description of son of Pavan, and then in parentheses it says wind. So I don't know if I'm interpreting this correctly, but how it lands in me is it's using the story, and it says, yeah, you're the son of Pavan, and maybe Pavan is wind. So you're the son of wind. And I'm like, okay, maybe. I remember thinking that same thing when I read one of these texts. I don't know if Shiva Sumita, I reference that one a lot because it changed me a lot, but there's these they're using metaphor and poem and allegory as a clear articulation of elements. And if you can have genuine understanding of how elements and wind and these different facets of life are coming into you, coming into your experience, coming into your nearby proximity, you're kind of less easily veiled by them. And so it creates this story out of, the literal ingredients of reality. Anyways, I could keep going on 11 minutes, but yeah, it's like your physique is beautiful, golden colored, and your dress is I don't know, it goes into some interesting kind of articulations, but it just sounds like it's talking about Christ. Like I read any of this stuff and I ask myself, what are the differences between these Christian teachings and these Christic yogic teachings? Oh, here's a reference to demons. With overwhelming might, you destroy the asuras, demons, and performed all tasks assigned to you by Sri Ram, which I would see Ram or Rama or Ra is the masculine kind of orientation. For the fulcrum is probably not the best word, but where masculinity comes from. I'd call it that. So yeah. Oh, it looks like Hermes got kicked off. Hold on, let me check on Hermes.
Sita is the female energy. Sita is the female energy.
Right, Sita, and again, Sita's everybody female. I feel like Sita is this reference to all female energy in the kind of same way that Mary Magdalene. It's like the Magdalene. If a a strippers in a, riding the stripper pole, and like dudes are tipping her. What are they really tipping? They're tipping Sita. They're tipping the Magdalene. The Magdalene is in that body and using her curves and shapes to provoke Kundalini, to provoke Shakti at the base of these humans' spines, to get some bread so she can pay rent or whatever. But there is only these archetypes. These archetypes
on a surface level.
It's all that's happening. We're just veiled by the names. We're veiled by the shapes. We're veiled by the details that then we start arguing about whose details are actually right. When in actuality, the details are almost so unimportant. It's insane. But if you don't have an actual experience of DMT, whether that's outward or inward, and see the reality of merger, it just bypasses all names. There are no words. There are there's no necessity for description. The description necessity is happening all in this mind. And it's where I felt so unintrigued by Christianity that I wanted to talk about, well, why is my mind overactive, and how do I meditate? And I couldn't find a Christian to help me with that. I couldn't find a Christian to really break down for me some of these things that are in the nitty-gritty of your internal experience. And I found a great, beautiful benefit in some Chongyang Chongpa and some Bodhisattva, some Buddha, and in inward sight lineage practices that for me feel so congruent. They feel so perfect to click in with Jesus. It's when someone tells me, Jesus or nothing, buddy. It's like, whoa, I was with you. What happened? We're supposed to be on the same team. You're threatening me with Jesus? I thought we were uniting with Jesus. Jesus, or you're getting off the bus.
That's hysterical. Threatening me with Jesus. That's hysterical. That's funny. That's the irony of all this.
It's so ironic.
Silly. Yeah. Silly. I mean, fighting the idea that, most of these kids are, who go over and are convinced to kill people, and most of them have Jesus and a cross around their neck, which, as Jesus says, is perfect. He says, you got me dead around your neck, then that's all you're doing is you're promoting death. He said, no one dies anyway, but that's the cycle you're caught in. You're just caught in the cycle of my idea of death. Instead of, like the Bhagavad Gita, see, every single one of these religions, every one of the things, there's a blueprint. It's like the Krishnas, there's no such thing as a Krishna. They with weird haircuts and this, and Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, it's weird. But the thing is, they had to hold the space. Just like the Christians had to hold their space to keep Jesus in the forefront, they're still in duality. So the last veil, of course, is, and as Jesus says, listen, when the veil comes down and you see my face in the clouds, he'll tell this to anyone who asks him, when you see my face in the clouds, which is what's going to occur soon. Apparently that's in the Bible as well. He says, where do you see how all those people, it's most of the people who call themselves Christians, that are going to go running, screaming, off the cliff, literally off the cliff, because they've been living in such an idea of material delusion of their concept of Jesus, when that Jesus actually appears bigger than that, the construct, they won't be able to handle it. And so, and that's just prepare yourself, know that the cliff is already there and that they're going to go off the end, and know that no one dies. They're just going to go into another density. That's all.
All right. Now full return to the initial node that was sparkling our mineral water. Zero pun intended, literal, all metaphorical, literal. We are minerals and water. So, but full circle to the beginning of this conversation. There's something happening socially with gender identity that is almost verbatim happening with political identity, which is all a trickling manifestation of tribal identity. Mm-hmm. Unless somebody can convince me otherwise with better articulation amongst my sitting and searching and understanding and being with, it is all amongst the topic of tribal identity confusion and tribal identity navigation. I mean, unless there is clarity, there is confusion, and that fusing is what's happening. We are all being infused together. Mm-hmm. even if you refuse or don't accept, there is still the process of merger happening. It's just the ones that are more palatable and the ones that are less palatable. Obviously such a huge, such a huge topic. And
Hermes,
there's,
Yes.
yeah,
go ahead. I may say.
simple baton pass. Take it away.
I was sitting here listening. My camera actually died,
I
but
saw that. I saw that. Well, you want me to give you more baton or you want to run?
Right.
Like, you want to
Yeah.
run with the baton or you want me to give you a little more?
Sure. I mean, well, I guess I'll run with the baton. How I perceive what's happening with gender in particular is it's being formatted in a way that is anti-Christos, right? It's being formatted in a way where it's perverting the divine hermaphrodite. In alchemy, there is this process that you go through where you essentially become this mercurial being that is of male and female, which is essentially like merging the electric and magnetic hemispheres of your consciousness together, which is also like Kundalini and like Ida and Pingala. But you're essentially merging the dual poles. And it's being done in a way that is moving into technological Luciferic. And it's created that way, like, because they're pushing the agenda of like transhumanism, right? There is no gender for consciousness. Like when you're an AI trapped in a machine or like a human uploaded into a server, right? But your avatar, this is pretty interesting to talk about. We're about to get into the Matrix real quick.
Good
But,
stuff.
but yeah, I agree with your confused tribalism. That is very, very curious. The world doesn't know who they are. They don't remember where they come from. They don't know anything about their history. They don't know anything about the building block principles or foundations that create reality, right? And these are all very fundamental and they're necessary to know because I mean it's the origins of what you are as a soul, right? And so essentially, I guess not to go too far into that, even, I mean, unless we want to go like,
Follow the river wherever it goes.
well, okay, well, let's talk about the Book of the Law of One and the Luciferian consciousness is essentially this interdimensional artificial intelligent frequency that came like from an alternate dimension within the multiverse, which is really odd. I mean, all you gotta really do is watch an Avengers movie to find out what's going on.
It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah. Like this consciousness, which is really funny because in let me illuminate real quick. Lucifer, right, comes from Luxus, which is light, and fair, which is to ferry or to carry, right? And the direct definition of phosphorus is that Lucifer essentially is phosphorus, and that's what phosphorus does in the body. It sends different chemicals to the base pair DNA. And so there's hydrogen in the middle that creates the bond, which is Yeshua. And then there's the two DNA structures on each side. And then it's phosphorus, which are the chemical, which carries chemical messages to the DNA so that it could get iOS updates so it can activate, right?
So it's plugged into the true server.
Yes, exactly. And hydrogen is essentially a form of light, right? It's solar energy. It's funny, I actually wore this. I never wear yellow. I can never wear colors, but I wore yellow today because we're talking about the Christ.
Wow.
But also, sidebar, stream Solar Falcon on SoundCloud.
Hey, please. It's got it all in there.
Yeah.
The the just to add piggyback into what's being said through you, the Christos and the Lucif are already there. It's just what gets worshipped.
Yes.
It's just what gets emphasized.
That's it.
My
That's
guide showed me, stop using the word ego, start using the word time-based identity structure.
Mm.
And
Right.
in that, there is also the time emphasized identity structure. And so in that, it's the, do you have the ability to do harm? Yeah. Do we worship that? No, that just sounds weird. Now, if you want to rebel and you're really, at odds with the establishment, then maybe you would worship that because you got some of that disgruntled energy that you need to exercise. Now, if you need to exercise that, one great place to start, and it's an elemental frequency. I hear you saying that is how I transcribe it. Would you say that that's all kind of accurate?
Yeah. Elemental frequency, like base understanding, right?
Yeah.
Or,
where's the signal come from?
yes, exactly. So like even before we talk about these structures, can I just like break it down technically?
Hit it.
How I understand things?
Hit it.
In the beginning was the word, and the word was God, and the word was with God, right? The word is actually a frequency, and that frequency manifested all things. That frequency, if you burst the sound bubble underwater or if you burst a bubble underwater with sound vibration, it actually creates light. And so when you know that, when two hemispheres of sonar vibrations interact, it creates a Vesica Pisces, right? Which creates the eye, which essentially manifests light. Light can then come through and it bounces around the structure of the sphere and creates geometry. This geometry is hosted in many different facets, but essentially it is created from the tetrahedron, which is the triangle, right? And that geometry manifests all Platonic solids, which create the elements that we experience, and the elements are the building blocks that create all structures and forms. But before they do that, they come from realms that don't have bodies. They're energetic, subtle consciousness that are archetypes that then enter body forms from spirit to matter. And so the hologram of the holographic simulation code of the flower of life that manifests the simulation that we are currently in is a form of matter. Spirit experiences through matter in order to evolve. When we look at if we look at these different structures and how they manifest, they break off into mathematical codings. And so there are 12 zodiacs around the wheel, right? And the 13th, right? And there are also 12 organs and glands in our body that are associated with these archetypes. We are essentially a mirror of everything above and below in every single density. And it's interesting, just the context of that term. What do you say? Time-based identity stations?
Structure or station, yeah.
Yeah, that's
System.
how that works. Like in each density, there's an identity station of self, right?
System, station, structure.
Mm-hmm. And there are 12 dimensions before we return back to oneness, or what people would call Christ-like consciousness. Actually, I actually pulled up this thing. Let me read it real quick. In the first harmonic universe, which is based off of 3 densities, because everything is base 3, right? Everything's built in trines and triangles. Even if you look at the Kabbalistic
H2O.
H2O, yes, yes. Even if you look at the Kabbalistic tree of life or the Catholic tree of life, you see this model of how consciousness enters physical form, but more so you can get a star map of your consciousness and then many different realms and bodies it exists in. And so within the first harmonic universe, 1D is subconscious, dimension 2 is instinctual, dimension 3 is reasoning. And this is the individual self in the harmonic universe 1. And then there is density 4, which is the astral plane, density 5, which is the archetypal plane, density 6, which is the angelic plane, and that is our super conscious harmonic universe.
Wow. Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure. Of
There's
course.
this what if you're just like, no, I'm not done wrong. There's this paradoxical thing happening as you're describing the progressions of the dimensions. It's
Mm.
as the dimensions get higher, the geometry gets more complicated, but
Yes.
how it interfaces with matter gets simpler.
Yes.
Simpler.
Which
Yeah.
for
Good
an
point.
ego mind, you're like, no, what? But
They
in
need
the
a hug.
Christos, you just need a hug. I just need a hug. But from the
It's the truth,
more
by the way. That's it. That's it.
that's it.
That's the
That's
whole thing.
there's nothing
Like
else to talk
this,
about.
that's the beauty of it. It's like, isn't that interesting? I'm just saying that. It's like I could just see, you could just feel everything just shifted everywhere for everyone. The listeners, the ones who were listening, the pastor, everyone. It's like that's all it matters. Is that this is the connection. It's like that's why when you just said that about the higher the higher it is, the more the simpler it is in terms of translation. And it's also true with like the great leaders. Like you brought up Sadhguru. I'm so glad you brought him up because I've been thinking about him a couple of days, and because what a beautiful beautiful being he is, and that he exists in this time, and he's just so light and so easy and so clear and functional. And I forget the point. I got lost in there, but just go on.
It's all good. It's all good.
Whatever
Sagru beautiful, and as actually part of what the pastor pointed at, on my left ring finger is a copper ring that's kind of shaped like a snake, which I was obviously Kundalini for a yogic background, but I got it at a Sadhguru retreat. And anyways, his pastor literally specifically was like, "You got to take that off." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Really? This ring?" I was like, "You probably see this as like the Garden of Eden, as the snake. Is that what you're seeing?" And he's just like, "You must break all bonds with everything other than Jesus." And I was just like, "Whoa!" And I just took it off, and I was looking at it, and I was just like, "Do you know the word Shakti? Do you know what Kundalini really is? Do you know if there's any?" We were in a big restaurant kind of vibe, and I was like, "Do you think anyone in here doesn't have Kundalini in them?" And he said, "All I know is that I've performed exorcism for the past 20 years, and that I've seen people writhing and their bodies were flipping." And I'm like, "Whoa, that's totally what Kundalini does if it's not managed
right.
properly." And you're seeing
Exactly.
this from this Christian perspective, and like, "Whoa, this person's got a demon." It's like, "Whoa, I guess this entire planet has been disturbed by the symbology of the snake and the kind of root origin of this mammal bipedal hominid organism called humanity." And it's like, we don't want to talk where we're from. Let's just talk about where we're going. And I think that's where the integration happens, because the Luciferians only talk about where we're going. And that's where the ultra progressivism comes from. And the conservatives only want to talk about where we're from, and they want to resist where we're going. And they don't want to go where we're going in a shiny, loud way. They want to walk in a kind of humbled way.
Good. May I interject here, Rocco?
Hit it.
Okay. So this is
Or
very
hug
important.
It.
Okay?
Or hug it. You don't
Here's
have to
the
hit it. You
deal.
can hug it if you want.
Here's the deal. Thank you. Here's the deal. This is all us, as we know. Okay, so these Luciferians, it's all nonsense. It's also because we're a self-calibrating system. What it is Lucifer. The idea in this story, okay, is that Lucifer, from what I can feel, is that Lucifer is one of God's favorite angels, and he says, okay, here's the deal, here's the game on planet Earth. Okay, it's the most challenging. Okay, we're going to give everyone's got a Garden of Eden that they're coming down to, using all their senses and everything else. Blah blah blah. He said, but the deal is you got the game is everyone's going to be challenged, and the challenge is whether they get caught up in this material or go, wow, thank you God for all. My God, look at that bird singing. Oh my God, thank you. It's like you have to be the one, Lucifer, to go down and enter the mass consciousness mind to play that other aspect of try to knock them off, bro. Try to knock them off. Until they have to find their way back. Get into them, because the deal is no one can be affected by the devil in each. Because the devil in ourselves. That's the aspect of ourselves. Is that separates from the whole. It's just a separate. So Lucifer has to be the energy that comes down and tests it to the core, knowing that we're not our bodies. That's the only way he could instill this. How could you do it? You're eating babies, have them eat the babies. Why? Why? Lucifer says, have them eat all those babies. Why? Because they're eating all the babies of the other animals, and without even thinking about it. So they need to eat the human babies. Eat the human babies so they can see. No one dies anyway. I mean, so that's his role. His role is the ultimate calibrator. And so we go, then he can let go of his role. We don't need to do this shit anymore. To let go of your guns because they don't do anything, obviously. No one dies anyway. That's what we're coming to. Lucifer did his job. Thank you. Thank you for all you Luciferians who stopped just short of actually understanding what his role was. Just like the Krishnas, they stop and listen. It's all the same everywhere. You can't tell you how many. When I was in the Krishna temple, as you know, with no memory, so it was Guru Dev and Prabhupada who were talking to me, and I said, "What is going on here? It's a freaking madhouse." And they said, "Just keep your, just stay on, just listen, just hold your space and listen." And what I heard was, I heard that all these people in Krishna, but wait a minute, they were in the Bhagavad Gita where they're still on the playing field. They still have their weapons. And they'd say to me, "Jamuna, sometimes you got to kill. You got to." I said, "Wait a minute." After I understood enough was going on, wait a minute. That doesn't, not only does it feel right, but that story's already been done. We're at the end of the story where they have music in their hands. The same with the Christians. We're at the end of the story where Jesus isn't on the cross anymore. He's already risen. That's an old story. So every single one, Jews, we're at the end of that frigging story of materialism, which is what the Jews, everyone went to something, you know, but the core of all of it, which is why you say religion is important. Yeah, because the core of it is to recognize God. You know, Islam recognized God, and that's why there's so much incredible creation that came out of all these religions. And then, boom, there's a duality. Yeah, well, they killed 1 million women here, 1 million. It's always the women who get it. The women here, that's the signifier. That's, you know, that it's no longer. Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, please.
I hear the sticky note summary of that as when it really boils down to boils too, alchemically, socially, that is what's happening. When it boils down to our everyday experience of interacting with other human beings, some hyper-emphasize matter, some emphasize the God particle, spirit, which on an individual level is integrated into every human as a crystalline soul. And that crystalline soul plugs into the human body as psychology. Whoever's showing up and making whatever choices and whatever they think they are and however they identify, their soul is plugging into the human hardware, and that's showing up as their psychological orientation towards every other human being, which is really a perception of themselves. And those that are more into the dividing are oriented that way because of that's where they land in the boiling. I love that image of in like grade school, like biology, and you pour water into a beaker, and you pour milk, and then you pour like syrup, and then you pour like maple syrup, and then you pour like vegetable oil, and all of the ingredients on their own without anybody doing anything, they self-organize, and they self-organize in density. And it's just some stuff is thicker, some stuff is heavier. It just goes to the bottom, and this other stuff just happens to go up here. And amongst our collective, you know, pot cooking, I feel like, you know, the age of Aquarius we're really starting to see viewable, perceivable manifestations of the age of information. You know, I don't remember the term disinformation, but I guess it's been around. We didn't really talk about Rome, but to me, that's where I really unplugged from Christianity, was when I found out about the Council of Nicaea, and I found out that literally the people who really were in charge of Christianity becoming mainstream were the same people who killed the dude who started it. And I was just, I was mind boggled to be like, ultimately, I just became discerning. I just became discerning where any of my stuff came from. Oh, who's that? Interesting. Lucifer. Whoa. What are the repercussions of following this stuff? Wow. Okay. I know. I feel like Hermes and I have talked about it. Rudolf Steiner. Jamuna, have we talked about him?
Yeah, he's brilliant. Rudolph. Yeah, it's amazing.
brilliant. And there's people who have some, disgruntled perspectives of his stuff. But one of the best, super simple, just like, let's keep shit simple of this. It's like, okay, you have Earth and you have time. It's just moving forward. And so then different people are saying we should do this, we should do that. So it's like Earth is this boat, and time is a ship, and space. It's a metaphor, whatever. Rudolf Steiner had this diagram that said Christ is actually the tip of a spear that is the evolution of all things, and it manifests as the peak tip of like a triangulation of human potential, and it's the soul's self.
Wow.
Lucifer is like a wing of it. Ahriman is another wing of it. Ahriman is like pure destruction, and it's actually a balance.
Is this what Rudolf Steiner said about Lucifer?
Yeah, I had never even heard the term Ahriman until this Rudolf Steiner audiobook. It was like a reading of this alchemy audiobook of like spiritual psychology. I think it really grabbed me. I was like, spiritual psychology, I'm interested. And I'd heard about him because of his proximity to Madame Blavatsky and Manly Palmer Hall and J. Krishnamurti, funny enough. And so Rudolf Steiner's, and then obviously the Waldorf school. What's it called?
Waldorf, yeah.
Waldorf school system and stuff. So the guy had some kind of ideas that helped humanity. Apparently he was potentially, German and racist and some other stuff. But the idea is that Lucifer is like silver light. Christ is gold light that is pure. The silver light has this tint to it that comes from a need to be individual and use individual willpower in a way that is basically hyper creative, but it comes with repercussions towards destruction. It's not pure destruction. It is actually still creative energy, but it's with like selfish. Yeah, but it seems like Shiva actually integrates all of it. Shiva is like the destroyer and the creator, the partier, and the guru. So it kind of, for me, I remember making this little map one time of like, I remember writing, Lucifer is a disgruntled Apollo. Zeus is this Caucasian Greco-Roman Shiva. There's this other guy from the Roman kind of pantheon that's all about partying, big parties and gluttony.
Bacchus.
This, yeah.
Isn't it Bacchus? Was that right, Bacchus?
No, there's a spirit. If you said the name, it'd definitely click in. But like, there's all these different. Yeah. No, it's not. I'll try to think of it. But there's all these, parallels and then differentiations. But it's all just archetypes for how the light is the light. Now we give names to the light and how it moves forward and all these facets. I've always really felt a learning clicking in when listening to Hermes speak around the geometry of these things, because it's like, whoa, I can start to see. He's talking and I'm like seeing, these different dimensional planes have different facets and different geometry. And the geometry of mathematics. Hermes, something that Jamuna has been saying since I've met him, he's like, you got to watch the mathematics of it. That's not the math. I was like, whoa, what do you mean by the math? It's like, well, that doesn't add up. Does it add up or not?
Oh my God. That makes me laugh so hard, Rocco, because that just reminds me when I got to the Krishna temple without any memory. And I kept saying, they kept saying this. I said, it's not the math. It's not the math. They were like, what are you talking about? It's not the math. And then hysterically, they were looking at me. They knew that I knew what I was talking about. But I said, that's not the math. No, it's not the math. And it was so freaking hysterical because they knew I wasn't making it up. They knew that I was just responding to the math. Either it's true, the math of love is the math of love. What happens, all the numbers disappear once you hit the math of love. That's what Jesus is the ultimate mathematician. 0 point. Right.
0 point Krishna, 0 point Krishna consciousness, which also a code that you gave me, Jamuna. Krishna is not a full statement. Om is not a full statement. And you click open the container of any soda can.
Right.
When you say Hermes, in the beginning there was a word, that's what I hear. And it's specifically from profound
Beautiful.
story that Jamuna
Well,
has shared, but it's a full sound that it's
well,
a crack
exactly.
and a cut.
And right. So if I may add, what Guru Dev and Prabhupada passed to me is that
Please.
They said that Krishna, Prabhupada said, the sound, because I said to him, what is this? Is this real? I mean, is this real? Because I maybe have no memory, but I know what's real and what's not. I said, is this real? All these people on the ground, Krishna, Krishna at 4:30 in the morning. What is this? This is like a show. And they said, yes, it is a show on the surface. But understand, what they don't understand is that they're just simply here to hold the space for the can opener to the consciousness, because actually the sound is KRSNA. And this is very important, because what's happened in the ego, this is a very important thing I'm gonna bring up here right now, that is going to cause, a lot of people in a lot of the communities go, oh, yeah, and that when you hear the math of it, you know that it's true, is that it's KRSNA, and there's dots underneath the RSN, which means it's Krishna. It's not Krish, it's Krishna, okay? Now, which means you're not supposed to split up those sounds, okay? They're vibrations. And so what was explained to me by Prabhupada is that it is a can opener. Literally, if you put your hands together, like if you put your hands together right now, like put them together in a palm, and you face your near your chest, and you face between your, like almost at your throat chakra actually, and you push you point them forward, okay? And when you say Krishna, you go Krishna, and you push it forward and you open it up. He says it's a can opener to this consciousness. And then this is why in the Bhagavad Gita it says Krishna's favorite sound is it's Aum. Okay, it's not Om. Om is the dumbing down, because then you're not drawing in your lower chakras. It's you have to draw in all your chakras. So it's Aum, and so it's Krishna. What it is, the full aspect of it is Krishna, Aum, Krishna, Aum. And I'll tell you, it is so much. I did that with our our grandson. It was 4, and he will not. The kids, they respond to what the truth is. He is laughing and loving it, and then it's fun, because that's what the deal is. The consciousness is fun. It's not some drapey shit where people, oh, Jesus, the blood of Jesus. That's not what Jesus is about. That's not what Krishna is about. That's not what any of this is about. It's about the joy within. And that's all. We're just stripping all it down to the joy. The rest is nonsense. But, this is the thing. This is what I want to say about, very important with the Krishnas, is that what's happened is, what's his name? Krishna Das does it. Oh, the Indian singers do it for years. Is that they stylized. Okay, and they go Hare Krishna. Oh, and that's like glass actually on the ears of the consciousness, because it's actually taking it and stylizing. They want to be so close to Krishna that they go Krishna, and it screws up the math, because that Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare is actually the primary configuration that puts the male and the female aspects of the mind back into order. That's what it's about. And so the Krishnas had to take it over. There's no such thing as a Krishna. There's no such thing as a Christian. It's not real. There's no such thing as a Buddhist. It's not real. These aren't real. These are names that people call themselves, self-convincing. But just calling yourself a Buddhist is antithetical to the Buddhist teachings. It's calling yourself anything. Calling yourself a Christian is antithetical to Christ's teachings. Calling yourself a Christian has nothing to do with Jesus whatsoever. And so the same thing with the Krishnas, every single one of them along the way. It's no one's fault. That's duality. And as you said, it's just great the way you said, it's actually not replacing the ego. It's a full understanding of it. Say it again, Rocco, how you called it.
It's just a cleaner way to articulate the nature of the ego. It's a time-based identity structure, because you reference all of these things that happen in time and matter, and it's a structure. It's not a one place. Show me the one place where the ego happens. It can't find one place where your ego is. It's this structure reference.
Yeah, that's a structure, and those are important. Also, the thing is it's also important to see like the genesis of the words before we change them is to see the genesis, because ego is very important. Is when people argue, you gotta have ego, you gotta have ego. Yeah. Okay, right. Here's a gun, by the way, and a dead cow. Have a good time. And the thing is nobody's fault. It's a program. But the ego, if you look at the genesis of it, is actually I am in Latin is ego sum, which is the sum of the whole. And ego, so I am is ego sum. And what happens is the minute you just go ego, that's my ego, then you've separated from the whole. It's showing you right. So the Latin shows everything. It just shows everything. Wow. And once you separate the ego from the sum, that's it. You're nothing.
Something happened just now in that last articulation that clicked back into where you had left off, Hermes, around the dimensions and the structures, and how it almost sounds verbatim to Carl Jung's work of like the unconscious. And that's a dimension. The conscious, the instinctual, these are dimensions. They have math. They have their own kind of spatial articulation that you can kind of begin to relate with the more you become conscious of them. If you plug out of the collective, then you are really just this individual, which is this illusion. And that's why Christians feel like it's so helpful to be reborn in spirit, because that is really a confused perspective. You think you're separate for how could you possibly function as a separate individual? Do you get this whole thing? So that whole structural plane reference, I think, is very valuable to anybody in a left brain kind of thinking. It's like, wait, that's true. Well, that's a good point.
That word's funny. Individual, in division of the dual.
In division, interesting. Yeah.
You said in division of the dual.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is trine.
Beautiful.
Or quad.
No.
Yeah.
Is it cool if I finish the
yeah, please.
Density structures? So we're at the harmonic 2. At harmonic 3, there's the catheric, the monadic, and what is known as the cheirotric. At the catheric, you've already hit the crown, right? And if you look at it from an as above, so below standpoint, at dimension 7, you've essentially hit the 7th chakra. That's the causal body. After that, at dimension 10 is when you make contact with the Christ-cheek. And then at D11 is the Buddhic plane, and D12 is the Nirvanic plane. So that's harmonic universe 4. I think people mistake density 4 for harmonic universe 4 because they don't really understand the dimensions and the harmonic universes and the beings that reside there and the physics and the maths of the beings that exist in those planes. But after
which sounds like super similar to how music is structured in like music theory.
No, yeah, it's exactly that. It's music, yeah. And at D3, it's the particum, and D14 partiki, and then D15 is the partika. So essentially, when you've hit harmonic universe 5, you've entered universal consciousness. There's only dualistic type of consciousness from D11 downwards. Once you've hit dimension 12, or the 12th gate of consciousness, everything merges into one. Everything merges into pure cosmic energy or universal energy. But
which is nearly impossible to maintain that space and have a physical body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not made for it.
No, it's not. Which is why time travel is very challenging, because we're moving to, which is what we all do actually when we go to sleep. That's what the humans don't understand. Why we sleep? No one can figure out sleep. Well, because that's we're actually time traveling, and we're going to whatever we need to experience, other than this kind of like contracted space. But coming back, and that's why it's not so easy waking up. Everyone's different. Oh, I can't get out of bed. Well, because it was much easier without your body time traveling and having all these experiences and coming back into this contraction. Once we understand this, it'll be easier, and we'll need a whole lot less sleep, first of all, because there'll be a whole general consensus of what we're doing anyway.
Mm.
We'll only sleep to have other experiences. Like you and I met the other night. I don't know if you're aware of this. Actually, you and I met, Hermes, 3 nights ago, I think. It was 3 nights ago, and it was clearly you when I heard your voice today. And you know, and I'm saying this online so it can be heard. It's like it was clearly you. Actually, I told Iris. I said, Iris, I said I had this encounter the other night, and I was woken up in the middle of the dream with, and it was your voice and your level of intelligence, and it was beautiful. It's just so everything is merging now in terms of one mind. So, you know, these are the last hiccups, you know, and it's like we use people like that pastor who's just such, you can feel him, he's such a beautiful guy. And it's just what he, as you know, as you said, Hermes, it's what he's taught, is what he knows, is what his program is. It's not what his true self. He clicked back into a program. That's all. And all this is for us to identify that in, first of all, ourselves, and then identify that with the others that are we love. Oh, that's where you stepped out of love. Ah, come back to the hug. Oh, wait a minute, the demon. That's just the cop out. You wanted another hug, and that's the only way to get back in. That's the truth. He wanted another hug. He was embarrassed. And so instead of another hug, he went to demon talk. It's that simple. I mean, that's what Jesus is. Jesus like, simplify it, man. That's it. You want the hug? There's the hug. You want to talk nonsense? That's because you need another hug. That's what Jesus would say, you know?
Hermes, any other callings to point out with the continuation of the structure mentioned?
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. It's funny. We actually we merge with, or we create contracts with everyone. And there's a particular set times. It's funny that you said that I met you 3 days ago. But,
tell me
yes,
how that feels. Tell me what tell you.
I have to get back to you on that. But yeah, with the density constructs, we're also talking about time. As you get higher in density, you essentially are vibrating at a higher frequency, right? Your consciousness, your awareness is vibrating a higher frequency. And that's exactly how time works too. There's many different time matrices stacked on top of one another, because time isn't linear. It doesn't exist. To us in this time space matrix, we call it time, but that's not really what it is. It's just stations of awareness, moments of awareness. And it exists simultaneously on every single density plane. So me from the future, so this is this is getting into, I guess, format of what Christ, parts of what Christ consciousness is, which is essentially loving awareness. And loving awareness emanates from the heart space. And our hearts are directly connected to all of our other selves in multiple time matrices. So within the multiverse, there are iterations of me that exist in every plane. So like right now, I exist in the four worlds. I exist in I exist in the physical plane, the emotional plane, the mental plane, and the astral plane. But there's also a version of me that exists on Pleiades, Arcturus, Vega, Sirius, so on and so forth. There's versions of us that exist in many different avatar forms because of genetic coding. Genetic coding essentially allows for the soul of a participant of the reality or realm to experience what it's like to be in an avatar and what it's like to be in time-space matrices of stations of identity. Does that make sense?
Well put. Yes.
Non-locality.
Yeah. So I, as you, as all beings, have multiple versions of ourselves, but we share one soul. We share one I am presence, but it's fractalized in many different harmonies in order to sing the song of the great, whatever you want to call it, Om, the word, or Aum. And even speaking about what is it, vernacular terms? Is that what people call it? Like when I look at language, language is magic, all right? The A sound, like the AUM in Aum, it's essentially hitting every single vowel, A-E-I-O-U in Aum.
Mhm.
So it essentially has the full spectrum of vibratory frequencies to manifest inside of a sphere, right? Does that make sense? So
Yes,
like,
and it's been reduced.
oh,
It's been reduced. It's been reduced like everything else, like all of religion, like everything else. It's been reduced by. I took a yoga class a couple of months ago. It was a tantric yoga class, and at the end he went, "Okay, everybody, we're gonna Om," and he went Om, and I went like, "Oh man, everyone's in their head, like from their point of contraction was so intense. I thought, oh my God, what? This is in every sector now. How everything's been the ego just our egos job is to abbreviate
mhm.
sensation, life, to abbreviate
Compress,
it, and it's our
simplify, and
job to,
compress.
yeah, to dismiss the actual mass of the frequency of Christ consciousness, the way, and that's actually to dismiss it or to switch the numbers around, to leave something out. It's just a puzzle, and we have to find our way back. And that's what I say, Jesus is the way, because he actually will drop the numbers back in. Just put a 4 over there, a 7 over there, and your head straight. Feed those people.
Yeah, he will show the math.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll show you the math.
what's interesting is like plasma, right? So like ohm is another measurement form of electricity, right? Plasma is essentially all the four elements combined. We live inside of an electric universe. If you look all around you, even at your physical avatar system, it's all based on what do you call it? Is it dielectric structures? So essentially, like the way neurons branch off, the way a tree works, the way caverns of mountains like split, like everything is it's like it's lightning, it's
Yeah.
consciousness, it's a frequency that then enters physical, like enters many different forms to function through electricity and like plasma energy, like the sun, which is another iteration of Christic energy. It's it's like zip files of frequency bandwidths that are running through everything.
Yeah.
Compressed folders with a bunch of information in it.
Yes, which
It's a
is
nice
why
way to put it.
you're able to download information from the sun. Like if you understand the circuitry systems, your heart is directly connected to the Earth's core, which is beating at the same frequency as the Schumann resonance, which is essentially the radio station that we're tuned into, or the server that we're logged into to play this game that we're in, if you want to consider it a game. And that is directly connected with the solar system and its galactic core, also known as Indra's web. And that circuit, like it's all circuited systems of consciousness inside of spheres or membranes
Mm-hmm.
or cells.
Mm-hmm.
And we exist in many different bodies simultaneously now. So as everyone else, once they have cleared the ego mind and the identity station that they're in, saying, this is me, I am this person, I am this name. Like, no, you are awareness. Once you unplug from the body mind complex, what you're left with is pure awareness. And that awareness isn't local. It can travel between different density states. It can travel between different solar bodies. It can travel between different avatar forms.
It's been revealed in the kind of Kriya practices to my system of it's about which direction your I am is emphasizing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're emphasizing through the body mind,
Mm-hmm.
through your eyeballs,
Mm-hmm.
society, you're going to get glued to the ego as the ego.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the wherewithal in the inward compulsion and inspiration, you turn that I am around and you look at where you come from, and there's this great revelation, there's this great eternal well from which much water comes.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like any closing sentiments should arrive soon for nearing the 2-hour checkpoint of this incredible cascading conversation. We've really compressed a lot of zip files into a succinct, like the difference between Christian Christ, Jesus, and this. It's not New Age. It's really the eternal age, the ageless
Yeah.
orientation towards true Yeshua, not modern Western Yeshua. And all these topics that have come through are all part of it: the gender, the bifurcation process, the duality, the duat. Any closing sentiments from either of your sides?
Well, I would just like to add about this gender, because this is a predominant topic, and we'll talk about this further and deeper in it. But in terms of the gender issue that's going on, it's not a gender issue. It's not a race issue and everything. All this is about a separation from our true nature, which is balance the male and female aspect. And because the archetypes that have been promoted, especially acceleration, necessary in duality of Hollywood, necessary had to promote, because it had to be the perfect reflection of our duality and the separate, and also these archetypes, the Rock Hudson, Doris Day, she's got girls, he's got boys, behind camera. It's like, it has to be that way. It had to be that way, that we would follow these false archetypes, because we were following false archetypes, and that's what duality is about, until we finally realized that these aren't, they're not hitting home. And that's all it is.
Wait. There's so much. I got to jump in. So Rock Hudson, for those who don't know, incredible archetype. Doris Day, incredible archetype, and basically famous in Hollywood, but behind the doors, they were attracted to the same sex. And this is not just with these two. This is numerous
and across
examples.
the board.
Numerous examples into the olden days where we began measuring time in history and writing shit down in books. This is part of the lie, the great deceit that society has caused us to funnel our attention into this world in this certain way and create this really weird distortion towards same-sex attraction, aka that's what Jamuna just said.
The whole thing gets messed up because of the embarrassment, even creating the words homosexual, gay, lesbian, creating all these words. It's the same thing as creating Christian, Buddhist. They're all the same. Black. There's never been a black person on planet Earth. Black's because of the absence of color. You're talking about highly melanated people, so it doesn't make any sense. There's never been a white person ever that exists on the planet. So all these things are just a quantification of the human experience based on that identification pattern, that system, they'll call it the ego, that was necessary in duality to keep us all separate. To us, wait a minute, we're all turned on by each other. And now what are the instructions? How do we love each other? How do men love each other? How do women love each other? How do we do that? How is that? That's where the Kama Sutra exists. And the Kama Sutra, by the way, has been abridged. There's been 2 or 3 chapters of men making love with men, which do not include sodomy, because why would you put your penis in poo? That's the reality of the math of it. And so the deal is that it's nobody's fault at all. Nobody's fault. No one's being blamed here. It's just when we're embarrassed about our primary attraction to ourself, our own gender idea. Well, I'm going to smell you. I'm going to taste you. And then when we're embarrassed by that aspect, then everything behaviorally goes. And then we grab the demon and this and that. All that shit. It's all a cover. It's nothing. It's all nonsense. It's all a cover for the fear of intimacy. That's all. And that's all that's lacking now, the intimacy. We just need to be able to look at each other and breathe with each other, look at each other's eyes and breathe, synchronized breathing. And then everything changes. Yeah, thank you. What a beautiful convergence of energy and information. Wow. Thank you. Thanks for including me in the mix here.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on. Hermes?
Thank you. Aside from all the technical whatever structures of things, all you really need to know is that you're love and that the true mind is the heart. And if you live through that, if you breathe through that, then all actions are harmonious. That's it.
What a beautiful line. The true mind is the heart. Isn't that gorgeous? Wow.
And if you breathe and live through that, then what is it? All interaction is harmonious. Sounds pretty simple. Jesus seems like he's
that's
down with
gorgeous,
that.
Man. That is so beautiful. If I may share one last thing here from my part anyway, is that Fred Siegel, who was one of just the great peacemakers of the world, Fred Siegel said to me years ago, when I was kind of whining and bitching about the the state of consciousness, he says, relax. He says it's all shifting. There's nothing anyone can do. He says the consciousness is shifting, and what's happening is all thoughts right now are coming from the head, and they're just moving down to the heart. And all the humans are shifting. And that's all that's going to exist on planet Earth is thought will derive from the heart. That's it. So Hermes, well articulated. That's beautiful what you said. And if you haven't written that down, please write it down. And the placard, man, that's just the placard everywhere. And the coupling with the breath. I didn't get the last part, but Rocco, you did, and you'll have it. You know it because it's in your psyche. But wow, these are the kind of things that's all anyone. All we need is instruction. It's nobody's fault. You can't blame anyone for anything that they do. It doesn't matter. You're eating babies. You're doing this. You're killing that one. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. We're not our bodies, and we just love them and know that they're a reflection completely, everybody, of each other. We're all creating it in different various degrees. So, yeah.
Amen.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And it's a treat. I tell you, it's a treat to be with both of you, Hermes and Rocco, to be with you in this triangulated experience of having both of your densities so clearly articulated and so clearly imbued in Christ consciousness and clearly placed so that we can bring functional Jesus into the world. That's really the idea, is like bring functional Christ consciousness. It's not about Jesus. It's about bring functional Christ consciousness into the world. Otherwise, it just exists as platitudes,
Amen.
So,
Jamuna Das, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Bella. Love you. Love you both.
Love you, Hermes.
Thank you.
Love situations like this where the alchemy just pours through us, and I feel like if we just had multiple bathroom breaks, we could just keep it going for hours. And until the next session, which we will coalesce again soon, I'm sure. Tune in next time. Thanks for tuning in. Love y'all deeply.
Thank you.
Deep breath in. Deep gratitude out.